Hello, my name is Howard Milano, and today I'm going to show you how to make a crank slider quick return mechanism in FreeCAD. Let me show you what it looks like in an animation. So there's a crank that rotates, a rotary movement that drives an horizontal slider, which is the linear movement, and has a quick return at the bottom. Let's take a look how we do this in FreeCAD. So let's look at the variables. So we have angle that drives the rotary disc. Base distance is the base is over here and the distance to the center of the disc. Connector length, here's the connector. There's a certain length. Disc pivot radius goes from the center of the disc to the pivot there. I call it a pivot, so that radius. Disc radius is a little bit bigger than, so it's the radius of the disc itself. Part height, all of these things have a certain height. Pivot radius, these things are called pivots and they have a radius, make them uniform in size. Slider height, so here we have the slider, and the height is from the slider to the base, that's slider height. Slider length, the length of the slider. Slot arm length, slot arm is this one over here with a slot in it as a certain length. So some of these have fixed numbers. Let's look at the ones that I defined. Base distance. So this pivot radius plus 40. So that is this. So this much plus this much. And we have disc radius is a little bit bigger than disc pivot radius. Slider height is the length of the slot arm times 1.1, a little bit bigger. And the slot arm itself is defined as base distance, this pivot radius, and a little bit more. So that's the length of this thing there. Alright, variables. So let's hide this. Look at the parts. So here's the disc. It has a little knob on it, it's called a pivot. Let's hide it. Slot arm. The big slot plus the two places that you can put on the pivot, little knobs. The base. The slot arm is anchored at the bottom here in this base. Connector connects the slot arm with the slider. There's knobs again, pivots. And the slider itself. Alright, let's take a look here at the assembly. So we have the origin that we don't use. We have a master sketch. Let's take a look at the way it's built up. Here's the base. Here is the center of the disc. Here's the knob of the disc. That's the slot arm, this thing here. Here's the connector. Here's the slider. We have a fixed height for the slider. The slider is horizontally constrained. The connector has a length. The slider has a length. The slot arm itself has a length, but notice that these two distances, so the pivot there in the middle of slot arm, that is not at a fixed position. It slides around on slot arm. This one is fixed. That is the disc pivot radius. And I'll show you the variables. Let's set this to 45 so we can see better. There is the angle that drives the disc movements. So when you rotate this, you can see that the slot arm, which is a fixed length, moves, and that pivot there, that moves on the slot arm. And when we fill it all in, you'll see that that is the point that moves in the slot. All right. to Master Sketch. Let's look at let's leave that up to Master Sketch and look at the local coordinate systems. So slot arm is anchored at the bottom here, and it uses vertex for edge 3, and edge 3 is that one over there, so it's hooked there with this edge. The base is hooked over there, but it's not hooked up to an edge. It's basically a translation of the origin. Connector, it's hooked right over there, and it uses this one. It's connected to that edge there, edge 2. You can see it over here, vertex 3, edge 2. The disk is hooked over there, and it uses edge 5, which is this thing there. That is the edge 5. Then the slider, it is anchored there, and it uses this for the edge 1, vertex 1, edge 1. Alright, so all you have to do is put all the parts into the assembly using the local coordinate systems. So then it looks like this when you do that. Let's hide the Master Sketch. Let's hide this one as well, this last one. Put it back and set it running. Alright, you can see the pivot there moves in the slot, drags the slider left and right. The slider is horizontally constrained, and at the bottom here it will make a quicker turn. Alright, so this is a crank slider quicker turn mechanism in FreeCAD. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.